Hey everyone, welcome to the War and Stupidity podcast. I'm Colin.
I'm Clay.
And I'm Nick.
And today we're going to go over Bernie Sanders since last time we did the man himself, Donald Trump. And Clay, I think you wanted to start us off?
Yeah, so we're recording the evening of May 1st, 2016. We're well into the presidential primary race. And as it stands right now, Hillary Clinton holds 2,165 committed delegates to Bernie Sanders' 1,357. And most all political commentators, pundits, consultants say that Bernie Sanders has little to no chance of winning. So in our past podcast, we detailed Donald Trump's stances and kind of why you should vote for him. Well, the ship is, for most part, sailed on Bernie Sanders, like winning the actual Democratic primary. So we thought we would talk about his issues from more of a lens of where did Bernie come from and what are his issues, what merit do they have, what use do they have here in 2016 and moving forward, and just kind of approach it from that area.
So we start off in his early career, right? We start off back in 1830 when he was just a young boy.
Back when he was a young Bernie Sanders, but he was born with that hair. He womb to the tomb, that haircut. And,
womb to the tomb.
Yes.
I've never heard that.
I don't think anyone's ever
to the
used that
tomb.
with the Bernie Sanders in
With
that
someone
same
living.
sentence.
Is that a real
Somebody-
saying?
Probably.
Have you heard that before?
It sounds real enough to
Yeah,
me.
but I think it's a Clayism.
I don't think Clay
Could
is
be a
clever
Clayism.
enough to come up with womb to tomb.
Oh, you don't know about that, man. You don't know. You don't know about all those things.
Anyway,
Anyways, Bernie Sanders.
there's no S on that word.
Anyways, yeah.
It's just Sander.
Is it really?
The little one.
Oh.
Bernie Sanders?
Go ahead.
Anyways, Bernie Sanders, his political career consists of, he was the mayor of Burlington, Vermont. Don't know where that is. And he was a member of the House of Representatives, the United States House of Representatives, for a few years. And now he is a junior senator from Vermont. Patrick Leahy from Vermont has been there longer, so he's the senior senator, and Bernie Sanders is his junior. He also, one fun fact, is the first Jewish presidential candidate to win a presidential primary. So, bit of a historic man, other than looking like he does. Yep.
Historic for many reasons.
Yes.
Yeah. So do we want to start off with the topics? We went through, I think with Donald Trump, we went through the top 3 or 4 topics. So what's the first one that he's listed on his, what's the thing he brings up most often?
Would you say it's the education, or would you say it's...
Kind of income inequality,
Yeah.
anti-Wall Street. Yeah.
Yeah.
So if we want to start on that.
Sure. So what's his official stance? Do you have that up, or do we need to...
Well, his official stance is that we need to be weary of Wall Street. We need to pay attention to what they're doing, and we need to work, with Wall Street or kind of against Wall Street to shorten the income gap. So.
Yeah, that in addition to, I think, putting Wall Street into government type deal, to where he wants to kind of keep it separate, because otherwise you have, politicians being funded by large corporations, and so it kind of biases, I guess, what they have with their political agenda. Rather than maybe going for the people, it becomes for certain private sectors.
Okay. So what's his solution to these politicians that have funding from these large corporations, different things that are causing what this inequality gap is? What's the foundation for it, not a foundation.
Foundation, that sounds,
I don't think he has it. I don't
fun.
think the corporations need a foundation.
No,
Yeah.
I don't think so.
I guess, I don't really think he's outlined a specific law that he wants to pass, but I would imagine that's an issue. He wants to actually pass a law that says you can not take money from corporations. I would imagine. So
I think a large portion of it too is, up until more or less this election, it's not really been brought up in such a light like he has, to where he's, more so than any candidate I can remember has actually brought this forward and said to the American people, saying, I haven't taken any money from large corporations as opposed to all of these other candidates.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. He was at a rally, I forget where it was, last week, and he's been pushing Hillary Clinton to release some of the statements that she made in these speeches that she makes for pay. So she makes a lot of speeches. She, I think, made like $8 million on speeches over the last couple of years, and he's made zero, and so he's pressed her to release some of the transcripts from those speeches, and so he's been pressing her for many weeks, and finally in this rally last week, he said, here you go, I'm going to release mine. He just threw nothing up in the air because he has made none.
That's funny.
But in a roundabout way, no one's asked him to, so yeah, I don't know.
But I mean, if the first step to solving the problem is admitting that we have one, I mean, then he's
right on it,
taking the first step. So for that, I think I would say that's commendable. To be able to say this is what he outlines as a problem and being able to share it rather than sweeping it under the rug or being part of the problem. Because I think too often we see, even in just the American culture, where we'll say it's a problem and then, in this case it'd be corporate handouts are terrible, and then take corporate handouts in order to get what he wants done rather than stand for a larger issue, which it seems like for the most part he is. Now that's not to say that I agree with necessarily his stances on everything, but it's commendable, I'll put it that way.
No, definitely. I think every American would want to think that their politician is thinking for, making decisions based on Americans' prosperity and not based on how much Goldman Sachs paid them last month for a speech, or just wrote him a check for arm, elbow time. So,
and every American wants to feel that the politician is standing for them. And one of the smaller, or I guess less important issues that he's talked about is, and I was looking through this with my friend who is a nurse now. He just passed his nursing school, so congratulations. He was looking through this document with me, and Bernie has a particular site of, he wants nurses to be better supported. Right now, nurses don't have very much say in how the hospital regulations work, and nurse-to-patient ratios are just terrible. So the idea that Bernie has, and that a lot of people have had in the past actually, is why don't we increase the number of nurses? Let's put some incentives in there and pay nurses better. Let's treat them better. Let's give them better benefits. Let's get more people interested in this particular job. And then let's also put them in a decision-making position to where they have say of hospital regulations instead of just the doctors and the staff and people that are, quote, running the hospitals.
Kind of democratizing that organization. Yeah.
Well, the question I would have, along with many of Bernie's policies, though, is what kind of effect would that have on the hospital as a whole?
That's right.
And I mean, because if you're wanting to increase staff and increase their pay, then you're talking that is a lot of overhead. I should say overhead, but basically a lot of more money that the hospitals are going to need to be able to generate. So,
right, and possibly charge people.
Exactly. So that can,
and that gets back to his tax policy
on everything else as far as economics go. I mean,
right.
As Clay said, kind of in the last podcast, it's one of the most complex machines known to man. The economic machine, and so it's impossible to predict. You want these certain items, but you don't know what the consequences long term will be, whether that will be more harmful or helpful.
I can't tell you that when James and I were looking at it, he was talking to me about it, and he said, these are things that we do need. The nurse to patient ratios are absolutely horrendous right now, and the care of patients would increase tremendously if we were to somehow entice more nurses to be hired and entice the hospitals to want to hire them, so that they would take on that overhead and possibly make less money overall, but have a better patient care. Yeah,
but how many? Because the hospital has to run like a business. How many businesses are willing to take that kind of a pay cut, to dip in their profits?
And I guess Bernie's response would probably be, why does the hospital have to run as a business? Why can't it be a nonprofit organization where you pay all of your staff X amount of dollars and everyone gets their money, but the organization as a whole doesn't make anything?
I think I don't know how hospitals run, so I can't really
comment
on that a whole lot. But I don't think you can have that run as a nonprofit organization based on everything that you have to buy. You can come out even, but what happens when times get tough and you have nothing to back you? If all of a sudden you have basically like a quarter without people getting sick, not to say that would happen, but if that were to be the case and no one comes to your hospital, then what's to get you through? How are you going to pay your people?
These are a lot of great questions. I think we definitely need to have a healthcare podcast.
Yeah, we can do a healthcare podcast. We'll get James on here.
We'll get James.
Yeah, it would be very beneficial since he knows more about healthcare than we do.
Yeah. Well, we hope so.
We hope so.
Yes.
That's right.
He should by now. He passed the test.
Yeah.
But yeah, so first issue we really talked about was a lot of campaign finance, income inequality. Any more to say about that? He wants to. I was reading he wants to raise minimum wage to $15. That's something that I feel like a lot of candidates are talking about right now.
Yeah, but I don't know. I just have an issue with candidates that bring that up because I just see that as somewhat popular. I see a lot of blurbs being popular, but not necessarily the right decision, because like we mentioned earlier, even in this post, is what effects does that have long term that we can foresee? I mean, we can easily foresee like some complications that come up in having raising minimum wage and some problems that will occur with that happening that don't get spoken about because everybody's just like, well, I get a better life. Well, will you have a better life with minimum wage increase?
Right. What if they lower your hours, or they decide that they can't have you on anymore? My parents run a small business, and not that they have employees, but if they did, that would put a huge strain on them, because the current minimum wage is 7 something, maybe 8.
High sevens. Yeah.
High 7s, close to 8. By nearly doubling it, you're looking at a huge cost increase.
Well, you're looking at a lot of the larger corporations probably laying off their workforce in favor of automation.
Automation, moving things offshore.
Yeah, outsource it.
That's the economy is kind of a zero-sum game in a lot of ways. If you require corporations to suddenly have this increased labor cost, then cost is going to go up to consumers. It's going to be passed on to consumers, or the jobs are going to go somewhere else. And that's what has happened a lot with automotive unions in the north, of our nation. They've not negotiated labor rates of $40 an hour for someone to drill a hole every day, all day, every day, and that's just, that job's not worth that, and so that thing's moved offshore, and we've seen how that industry's kind of played out over the past couple decades. So we need to think about that, and I guess the point is not to get in a rabbit hole about economics, but the point is, like you said, to understand that when you hear something that sounds really good, like let's help the poorer parts of our country make more money, that sounds great, and we can all get behind that. We no one wants poverty, no one wants to hold people down, but you just have to understand that there's a lot of balls up in the air that are juggled by any decision when it comes to an economic decision.
And there's a trade-off, and so if you make a decision rashly based on how it sounds initially, typically you pay for it in the long run.
Yeah, so we need to see some models on that. We need to see some projections on that, and we need a presidential candidate who understands that and has people around him who understand that. And I don't know who Bernie Sanders would surround himself if he were elected with, but I would hope that they would be prudent when they think through all that.
And see, going to Bernie Sanders, one of the things that I did like was whenever I brought up all of his topics, he did have a specified plan on where the money would come from. That I like. I would like to see that more in politics, and as well as being more broadcasted as to where specifically the money's coming from, rather than just what he wants.
Do you have an example of on hand? Or?
Not, I can't do it specifically, but it's like, say for college, he wanted to put a tax on, I think, welfare speculation, like a welfare speculation tax. That's supposed to bring in like $300 billion in revenue. Wall Street speculation tax, which is supposed to bring $300 billion in revenue, which, according to what it is, I think they had estimated that it was like $75 billion is what it costs to put people to college. So with that income, you should be able to pay for everyone's college. And so that's where he wants to get that money, and that is what I'd rather see, whether good or bad. That's the kind of thing I would rather see on news coverage, rather than what his demands are or just the little blurbs. I would like to see more and hold politicians to a higher standard of, okay, this is what you want, how are you going to pay for it, and then analyze if that is the right way to go about it. So yeah, I think that would just be better politics in general.
Yeah, to tie a string all the way through your idea, front to back, and see where it's going to come from, what it's going to affect negatively, positively, and
then have people focused on the details rather than always see on Facebook just the general. Oh, I want free college, and Bernie's for that, so that's what I'm going for. Instead, people saying, well, Bernie wants free college, so and so also wants free college. You can have more people, and then being, okay, well, his plan wants to put a 4% tax rate on Wall Street. Not saying that that's the percentage. That's the thing I don't like about the politics that we have, even with Bernie Sanders' plan, is that there's no specifics. But to be able to argue on specifics and then be able to see how that will work in a more specified term, and then you can better project how that's going to affect our economy and whether or not an idea is good.
And I think this whole conversation is good to talk about. When you're looking at a candidate, don't necessarily look at what they're going to do or what they say they're going to do, but you need to look at the realism and the realistic approach of, can they actually get this thing done? Yeah. You can go up there and say that you want to stop hunger and you want to solve the world's problems, but unless you have at least some sort of action plan, like Bernie has for paying for the free college, then that person is no better fit to be president than me.
They're really just pandering for votes.
That's right.
Not really have a plan or any sort of leadership.
You bring up a great point of what in Bernie's past has he gotten done that would project him being a very effective president.
You found some good stuff on
yeah,
that.
so we were just doing some research here, and from the Library of Congress website, you can filter down and see what bills any particular representative or senator has sponsored or co-sponsored or voted on throughout their career. And so when you filter down onto bills that Bernie Sanders has sponsored that have passed in our current legislation, there are 3. And 2 of which are naming postal offices in the state of Vermont after some humans. I don't know, Thaddeus.
One of them was Thaddeus.
Thaddeus something. So Bernie's, fought for the man and passed 2 bills.
Well, he fought for a man.
Just two in particular
Two
men. That and he's renamed some post offices in Vermont. So if you ever are stopping in Vermont, and you want to look at those. Then that's some hard work of Bernie Sanders. And also the third was I guess
disabled veterans.
Yeah, he increased some sort of benefit from the government for disabled veterans.
Okay, that's
and
good.
passed an increase for that. So, in his 30-plus year career of being a United States Senator and House of Representative member, that's his body of work. If you say that's solely sponsoring, if you look at that and say that's how you look at a body of work, now he's obviously done a whole lot, but those are the bills he sponsored.
But for our viewers out there, they may not have a gauge on if that is productive or not. So I think you also looked at whenever President Obama was a senator, how many bills did he pass? And
he
roughly
sponsored 2.
Yeah. So you have 2 bills sponsored that became laws, correct, from President
Obama.
While he was in the Senate.
How long was he in the Senate though?
2+ years.
See, that's
so 2 to 4 years, right?
Right. So, well, I'm just saying for our viewers out there that you need to understand he was able to pass 2 bills in 1/15 of the time that it took Bernie to pass 3, and 2 of which being about naming a postal office.
Sure, and like we talked about a little bit last time with Donald Trump, your effectiveness as a president. Donald Trump's background is in business, where he's kind of the commander, and he just kind of tells people what's going on and what they're going to do, and that's very different from working as one of the 3 branches of government at a federal level. And his ability to get things done, Bernie's ability to get things done with passing bills and pushing bills through Congress, speaks for itself. Those are the numbers. So just take that into consideration.
Yeah, and it doesn't seem to be any, I don't want to say controversial, because it's not necessarily that we need controversial bills, but they seem just kind of flat, the bills that he passed, where it's something everybody can get behind, not saying that it wasn't deserved or needed, but it's
but good. They weren't kind of life-changing for too many people. I guess it was, it's kind of small pebbles in a pond, and it's not making very many ripples, but also at the same time, it's not ruffling feathers.
Right. So
it was a very big impact for 2 people. Yeah.
That's right.
Very, very big impact.
Thaddeus and that other guy.
That other guy, yes, absolutely. So I mean, those are his hot button issues. We touched a little bit on free college tuition. I think that's kind of well documented. He wants to make college available for everyone. Another great idea.
The reason I think that's one of the more important ones to necessarily talk about or examine is because his voter base, at least from what I've seen, is largely those in college, and I would say that's probably a big reason why.
Yeah. I do know my uncle likes him a lot, and his wife. They really do like Bernie Sanders. I don't know how much of that is they just refuse to vote for Hillary, but they do. I think that they've looked up, and my uncle's a very smart man, so I'm sure that he knows exactly why he likes Bernie Sanders, and it's not this free college stuff.
Right.
It's the entire list of what Bernie stands for. Bernie's, I guess you could say he's the most man of the people out of anyone that's still in this race.
Probably so.
Yeah.
I mean, if you look at his entire funding, I mean, even though he repeats it many times, he's not been funded by any corporations. But I mean, the fact that he's gone through with more or less donations from people, I think does speak quite a bit about himself.
Yeah, it's remarkable. I mean, as we mentioned at the beginning, I think it's a great time to transition to where did Bernie Sanders come from and why is he still around? And kind of look at it through that lens. So if you look at it, he is by I think it's realclearpolitics.com. They have all the senators kind of on a spectrum of where they are, right, left. Bernie Sanders is the furthest left of any senator. So I think it's very curious that he is doing as well as he is in a national election as the most liberal senator in our
generation.
Our Senate. So That's something, and he's up against Hillary Clinton, she's a political dynasty. I mean, for the last quarter century, the Clintons are a political dynasty, and obviously Bernie's making some great ripples in the polls and winning a lot of delegates. While he most likely will not win, that is very monumental that he's able to do what he's been able to do as a junior senator from a small state. I'd personally never heard of Bernie Sanders prior to his run against Hillary, so
I neither.
I don't know, unless you're a political junkie or from Vermont, I don't know, how you know Bernie Sanders, but that's all something to note, that he's stayed around as long as he has, and kind of why is that? Is that what does that speak to about our society? I mean,
well, I know that one of our viewers was commenting about how the two-party system is broken, and I get it. It could be down to that the people running against Bernie in Vermont are just garbage, and no one else can run outside of that because they have 0% chance of winning. So maybe people feel discouraged and they don't feel like there's any way to move him out, but he also hasn't done anything wrong. And I think in our political society, so many people do so much wrong that when one guy comes in and he refuses to make a mistake, it's hard to put him out. Because he's not doing things that are harming you or your society or your community.
So you're saying you can't find things wrong with Bernie's career in politics because he hasn't
really done that much in the first place, or at least to my knowledge. I'm sure that he's done quite a few things, but not massive things. He hasn't, like I said earlier, ruffled the feathers of too many people. He's pretty much stayed on the safe side and always had his hand in the right pot.
He's played it safe.
That reminds me of a Winston Churchill quote. He says, if you've got enemies, good. That means at some point in your life you stood for something.
Yeah.
So, I believe part of it is Hillary has some flaws as a candidate. As much as she is a political dynasty and she's had a pretty successful career as Secretary of State, minus the whole Benghazi and all those other things. We'll get to that another podcast. But she's overall shown to be a very competent diplomat, and has Bill Clinton, who's the best politician in my opinion of our time, just strictly politician, not saying anything else other than that. But at her side, so I think Bernie Sanders hanging around as long as he has speaks to some flaws in her self as a candidate.
That she's not running away with the Democratic ticket.
Yeah,
right.
I mean, on paper, if everyone would say, oh yeah, she's going to run away with it. So I think that's just something to note, that maybe it's something about her, not as much about Bernie. But
yeah, I think it was a surprise whenever he was winning several states. I think.
Yeah,
more so
we got the news and we were pretty happy about it, actually. I mean, I don't think too many of us are Hillary fans in here, and for the most part, we were happy that Bernie was winning a few states on that side.
Yeah. It seems too that a lot of the Bernie sentiment is similar to the Donald Trump sentiment, even though they're on the opposite ends of that political spectrum. Political spectrum. Ooh, cameraman. Anyways, it's tough these days. Yeah, there we go, Colin. You're more cut out to put your hands apart than I am to put my hands apart. But anyways, like they're on the opposite ends of the political spectrum, but yet there's a lot of the same rhetoric coming from their their base or whatever, and it seems like they're both outlining some real. Well, first of all, they're outsiders. Bernie's an outsider. He's an independent officially, and he's not taking money from corporations. And then Trump's an outsider for all the reasons, any reason you can be an outsider. He's an outsider. But anyways, and so I guess maybe there's that kind of renegade guy, coming in that.
Well, I think what Bernie and what Trump what we see whenever they're winning so many, I think people are tired of politicians. I think that kind of shows that there's a large number of people that are tired of the lifelong politicians who basically almost sound like they're pandering for votes rather than getting things done or provide a different view. So
I've seen more than a handful of the term limits with the cross through it, and I can't agree more. I think if we had some real term limits, we would see not necessarily better people come through, but at least different people come through, and that would hurt Bernie because he's been there forever, but it would also take away the Republicans that the Democrats hate. It would take away the Democrats that the Republicans hate, and it would automatically replace, by definition, it would replace them with new blood, and I think that's a good thing.
Yeah.
The only thing that I would be concerned with on that, because I'm for term limits, the only thing I'd be concerned is if they make them too short, then you have people that'll be going out to make a name for themselves with something very controversial, and may not be thinking past, the next 10 10, 20 years.
Right, because it won't directly affect them.
Exactly.
You don't want the flash in the pan if that flash is toxic. You want the long burn of someone who can get something done, and if it's a 10-year plan and they are only allowed to be there for 4 years, then there's something wrong. My thing would be maybe 3 terms per I don't know, per House, and then 2 terms for the Senate, because that's a long time for the Senate.
Yeah, it's 12 years.
Yeah, it's 12 years for 2 terms.
Yeah.
6 per term.
Yeah. I've got a quote here from Newt Gingrich, who worked with Bernie Sanders in the Senate for 30 plus years, and he said, "At first we had mad love, but now we got bad blood." So,
Was that a quote by Newt Gingrich?
There's nothing on that page.
Yeah,
There's
so,
no quote there.
Yeah, but now we got bad blood is what he said. So,
well, it's more that we can put Taylor Swift in our
I think that's a Tasteway thing.
Yeah. Well, you never know about her.
You know, Kendrick was in that song, right?
Oh, really?
Yeah.
Kendrick, man.
Well, if Kanye,
they penetrate all parts of society.
Well, if Kanye is running for president, maybe Taylor Swift can run against him.
That's right. Well, I saw odds actually. Oh no! Do you remember seeing the odds of? And this is terrible for the podcast, but there was odds for. I was looking at the Leicester City in the Premier League in England for soccer, and it was 5,000 to 1 at the beginning of the season that they would win the league title, and they just won it. And it was 1,000 to 1 that I think it was one of the Republican women would win the presidency. And it was just kind of reminding me of just these crazy things that are predicted to happen, and the people will take your money.
Yeah.
No matter what you want to do, except for Bernie Sanders, he will not take your money.
Well, unless you donate.
Unless you're a grassroots.
That's right. Well, I think that's about all we have. Unless you guys have anything else you were, burning to say about Bernie.
Ooh.
No,
that's bad.
No, I mean, I think kind of what Clay said at the beginning. I mean, with Hillary kind of showing to be the front runner. This is more of a why was Bernie so popular in the first place? What can we maybe take away from this and see, what's the good, what's the bad, and how to move forward.
And what's the ugly?
That's
right. The bad and the ugly.
Yeah, you never know. Do you guys foresee, if Hillary Clinton is elected president, do you foresee Bernie Sanders being in her cabinet?
No.
No?
Mm-mm.
You think there's too much friction there?
I don't know if there's friction there, but I think that she just doesn't respect him at all in the first place. And I think she has probably her whole cabinet planned out right now.
Really?
I think Bill will be in an actual cabinet somewhere. He's
probably
not invited to the White House in the first place.
Cabinet.
Yeah. No, she knows. She knows.
Ambassador to Cancun.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Oh boy.
So no burn in
No, I can't see that happening.
Yeah. No, I don't see it happening either. And like Colin said, I think she probably more than any political candidate probably has her cabinet more or less figured out already.
Yeah.
Yeah, I don't know. I think he's probably only stayed around and jabbed into her long enough that there's probably enough friction there that would probably not be in.
I think it's more likely that Trump is in her cabinet.
Yeah, you think? I mean, the Clintons didn't go to his wedding, so
yeah,
which
he could be the wedding planner. That's what he could be.
They were probably all 4 of them.
Yeah. I will say this. I hope that, as Bernie Sanders goes by the wayside here as presidential hopeful, I really would like to see these issues talked about a lot more.
Mm-hmm.
These 3 issues that he's brought up. I mean, the taking money from corporations and in a campaign. I really wish we could talk about that. I wish we could further.
Maybe it's something we can write about in our articles throughout the week, and we can kind of look more deeply into it and just kind of put out a well-written piece and maybe a 5-minute video explaining what we found.
Right. And I mean, I'm not talking about just us. I'm saying America.
Yeah, we as a whole. But
yeah,
we can start with our viewership of a couple hundred maybe, and hopefully they spread the word and start talking about it, even if it's, hey, we saw these 3 idiots on YouTube and we want to talk about what they were talking about.
Yeah.
Or 2 idiots and a guy wearing a blue shirt. You're welcome.
Okay. All right.
So that'll wrap it up for now. You can follow us on Twitter at 2 Stupidity. You can go to our new website, which is still the same thing. It's 2stupidity.com. We've just done a revamp on it, so hopefully you like the new look.
We being Colin, he's the brains behind the website and creativity.
Well,
he is. He's the creative mastermind.
We'll leave it at that. But
we'll leave it at that.
You can also send us email at twostupidity@gmail.com. or you can comment on the video below, and we'll try to get to everybody. He's going to do the thing again, even though I'm still not going to put anything there. And in the meantime, have a great week.
Time to eat some lasagna.
Lasagna. Oh, yeah, that's good timing.
Did we just do exactly